And then we'll do Lithurgopsis. So Lithurgopsis and maybe even pronouncing that wrong, and Lithurgus were split a number of years ago, with the European or Old World and New World being the split. We have a invasive Lithurgus from the Old World, and then we have the native Lithurgopsis, and we'll get to those. So I think we'll go to Sphecodes right off. So we will share my screen here, and there we go, and there. And if we look online, what we're seeing are, I hope. Your speaker turned on. Oh, is my speaker? My speaker is on, I think.
Okay, that's all I was checking.
Okay, and so if we click on this, so Sphecodes are parasitic bees. Most of them are parasitic on Lithurgopsis. Probably some are parasitic on Halictus. I haven't done my homework. Someone could poke around and let the chat group know how broadly they're parasitic, at least in the New World. That would be great. In terms of other Halictini, and maybe do they step outside our Halictidae groups, and do they even step outside to parasitize things outside of Halictidae? So they come in a lot of different sizes, from maybe 3-4 millimeters, very tiny things, as what you would expect from Dialectus group parasitism, to something on the order of about 12 millimeters in the east. And I would assume that's pretty much the same in the West. It's a very confusing group at the species level. I still am confused. A lot of times I have to send things to Mike Arduzer, and he can't often resolve these things too. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that group, and the invitation is always there for people interested in taxonomy to tackle one or many of these things. I'm going to mention right here, because I'm thinking of it, that as always, we are very happy to collaborate with people on creating and expanding and augmenting and moving to different parts of the continent and then the world. Discover Life Tools will work with you directly on that. I will mention that I think it's okay to announce that Penn State at the, I'm going to say the Apple, I don't know what it's called, but they do apple and other fruit crops station, has gotten a big chunk of money to work on making the guides better at lots of different levels for eastern bees. Thank you for that. And then we're also talking to Alaska right now about bringing in the 100 or so species that are found in Alaska into the guide, which would be very useful for them, because it's very difficult to find ID information for that part of the world. And we extend that to pretty much anywhere else who would like to create guides for their regions. Okay, back to Sphecodes. David Bidinger, sorry, is the person who got the money for Penn State. So Sphecodes, confusing at the species level, and also not super straightforward in terms of having absolute characters. Basically, what you're going to see is usually a very dark black, often shiny glossy black, specimens, and often but not always with extensive red on the abdomen. It varies. So some of the males are completely black on the abdomen too. In fact, they don't have any red. But most have some kind of red, and almost all the females have at least extensive red on the abdomen. You get into some red, but with smudgy areas. You get into absolute red. You get into a more of an orangey red sometimes. In a few species, that red can extend to the thorax and the head, but that's pretty uncommon southern stuff. If you look at the vein, which we will hear in a second, what you'll see are very strong veins in the wings, and that's going to separate them out from the lazy glossum groups, which they could look similar to. Evelias, for example, that subgenus has members, in particular lazy glossum pectorale, that is as strongly sculptured as Sphecodes in a lot of cases, but these will not have any weakened veins. Usually the venation is quite strong. I should note that they are notorious for sometimes going from 3 to 2 submarginal cells on a whim. Sometimes even both wings will have that. So if you're looking at them and you see but 2 submarginals, you might look on the other side to see if that's still the case. In general, they have 3, though. There's a few examples where they almost always have 2. So you will also see in the female, which we're going to look at here in a second, no scopal hairs. Doesn't mean they lack hairs on the legs, but there would not be, as per a specimen in Halictidae, any extensive branched hairs on the femur or tibia. So we'll look at that. I think we'll jump now to a female specimen, and like my notes here say that the females always have bright red abdomen. The males don't. I guess that's probably true, that the females always have a bright red abdomen. There's probably an exception somewhere. Okay, so let's jump to the screen here with the camera on the microscope. And here is a very general gestalt. I'm going to tip it. You can see the shiny black, and it's never anything but shiny black. Okay, so you don't get a slightly brown black view or a different kind, or metallic sheens, as in reflectances that are in the blue and green part of things. And here is the classic red abdomen. Again, we get to a range of brick red, bright red, to an orange red, but clearly always this kind of coloration. You can see at the tip of this specimen here, I think this is mandibularis, but I didn't double check, that there's black. It's not completely red. If I said that in the memorization thing, we need to change that. Let me just look back there. Did I say that? But only with a bright red abdomen. Okay, maybe that needs to be clarified. So Claire, maybe we could mod that to be more.
I'm sorry, I was reading something in the chat. What did you say?
To not have, let's not put in that it has a bright red abdomen, implying that it is entirely red, or that we'll put in more.
Has red on it.
Yeah. So,
but this, I would like to add.
Yeah.
There's a question here in the chat. Well, 2 things. Oregon Bee Atlas person. We will return to that maybe at the end of the conversation. Just want to make sure that that got out there.
Wait a minute. What do you mean Oregon Bee?
So there was a question: what is the status of adding the Oregon Bee Atlas species to discover life that are in GBIF?
Better than Jesus?
That are in GBIF?
Oh, GBIF. Okay, well let's come back to that, because I heard, why is adding Oregon bees better than Jesus?
Well, that is a good question.
Yeah. All right. Well,
no, but James wants to ask, do Sphecodes also have PECA relatively thick integument? I call that crunchy.
Yeah. So like a lot of the parasitic species, you know, they're armored, because if you were the host, you would want to sting them to death so that you wouldn't have to deal with this invading parasite who would lay your eggs and eat your babies. So yeah, they're tough when you try and put a pin through them. If it's a bigger specimen, you'll find that there's resistance from the integument. And you can see here in this picture, this surface sculpturing here on the propodium end is pretty classic. There's almost always, not 100%, but almost always a lot of surface sculpturing, which according to the stories, I'm going to turn this to the side too, according to stories would also be protective of, in terms of deflecting stings. So if you were involved in a fight with a bee, you know, they're not going to grab you with their fingers because they have no fingers, but they have the sword at the end. So theoretically, having a tough integument and having the tip be deflected by all kinds of pits and sculptures is a good thing. Or maybe that's just a just so story. So, but this is very typical look to Sphecodes. So you almost always can just simply look at them from this color and shape, and you will know it's Sphecodes. To partially confirm that at the genus level, you would want to go, as we are going now, to the wing. And I'm going to put this in focus. And you will see they always have the classic bent basal vein. I'm going to slightly roll this so we get a better view. Yeah. And oops, that is not a very great view. So let me roll it again. Still, let me try again to get a good shot of the basal vein. Here we go. Okay, if you recall, most, to some people all, Halictidae have, here's the basal vein connecting the first submarginal cell to one of these lower veins, which I don't know the names of. And under non-Halictidae circumstances, this is either straight or it's just gradually arching, you know, slightly arched throughout the whole way. But here you see it travels along and then it curves down quickly and rather abruptly at the end. And that's the strongly arched look that tells you that you're almost certainly looking at something in Halictidae. So here we have Halictidae. There's the 3 submarginals, but sometimes there's 2. And if we look on the legs now on this female, you see there's not really a lot of actual identification markers here.
What Sphecodes do we have there?
What Sphecodes do we have here? This should be, I think it's, I'm trying to read this handwriting, davisii. Okay. One of the larger ones. And so the tibia here, no, it has hairs, but you're not seeing long hairs. And let's spin this a little bit so we can see the femur. And look back on the femur area here too, and there's none of the long hairs that capture, hold, and transport pollen that you would see in other species. Actually, that's the propodium. This is the femur right there, and still we have nothing on it. And so, but there's still hairs, and this is a good shot. And every once in a while in these females, not everyone though, so it's again not a definitive character, you will see, I'm going to run this all the way up on magnification, you will see some spines running off the edge of the tibia. And this is a pretty good example of both the spines and how it is a little tricky to tell if you have a spine, because they're nestled in the hairs, they're thicker, they're not a hair, they're a spine, so they're rigid, and you often have to backlight the leg. So we use these sometimes in the guide as secondary characters, but again, you know, we really need some strong molecular work and extensive collections to make sure IDs are correct, and that some of these characters, like, do they always show spines in a particular species or not, works. So I have to unfortunately say that there's probably a lot of bad determinations, even by me, or both by me and other people because it's just so tricky to differentiate among species. So there's the female, basically no pollen-carrying hairs, classic halictidae arched wing, yet the wing venation in the wing is not, is all strong. None of them are weakened. Okay, let's jump to the memorization thing and jump down now to the males. So the males, of course, are not carrying pollen to begin with, so we don't have that lack of scopal hair gift. But they are the same, they have that same shiny black aspect, but sometimes they don't have red abdomens. So most of the time they do. A great deal of that time, that red is highly invaded by black, most often starting at the tip, but it can be anywhere from complete, a tergite being completely black to having we got some echo. So microphone on. Speaker. Okay. All right. So any yeah. So is anyone getting more echo out of this? Hope and Clare chat message. Not sure what happened there.
Still echoing?
Still very echoey. Let me check over. Hey, you guys have microphone on over there? Are you listening? Okay, check and see if the mic should be off. It's off right here. It's off there. Okay. And so we're still getting echo from everyone. I'll turn. Well,
it went away.
It went away. Okay. I'm not sure. Maybe it was the government agencies that are listening in in case we're doing something nefarious.
Thank you, everyone. While we're interrupted, I'm going to bring up two things that came up. One, I forgot to say, Peterman has seen Sphecodes visiting Halictus rubicundus nests, but haven't dug them out to confirm that they actually left any eggs. And Anne asks, does that mean without molecular work, I think she sent this when we were talking about the spines, that we should stay with Sphecodes species on our determinations?
Okay, so should I? Yeah, mine's on. So I would say regarding determinations that there's some species that are really clear. So I think it's Heraclei has the raised welts on top of the head, although there is a reddish version of it that is given a name in the south that needs to be verified that it is indeed a separate species. So what I would say is you could put, try to get these, let me back up. So usually you can get pretty close within a collection in terms of determining that you're looking at different morphospecies. Putting a name on those, you can very carefully parse through Discover Life guides, which right now I think are the most up-to-date in terms of what we believe are the best guidelines, and you can back off that with a name, or you can do a name and a question mark. You can do a morphospecies 1, 2, and 3, and then you can do some mixed thing if you feel confident in the determination. Or Mike Arduzer, who's the North American expert on Sphecodes, did your determinations. That is good. So it's probably some combination of those. So a few of these species are really quite obvious, but even some of the obvious ones, often there's more than one species in that club of obviousness. So there's more than one that has the raised welt on top of the head. And there are several that are large and have antennae with segments taken out, as some of the males do. So I'm sorry I have to be so vague about that, but a lot of the ones that I ID, I end up calling them, species. But usually it's a mix for me. It's some I can feel confident enough get names, and others are a mix, and some I'll put a question mark at the end. Okay, so males, same thing. Very black, shiny, very rugged. The wings are all not weakened. It's got the halictidae, strongly arched area. And but sometimes the tergites are completely black. Often this is with the small species. And so those in particular could be confusing. However, when you're looking at those, some of the things you might confuse them with would be halictus. And so in halictus, there would always be hair bands of some kind, even in the males. And there would be sometimes, and often, is it always? At least often there would, I think always, there's some yellow on the clypeus. There's never any yellow on the clypeus of Sphecodes. So it's a lack of a lot of things. So there's no hair bands, there's no yellow on the clypeus. And almost all, with the exception of a few tiny species that are rarely seen, but are there. The propodium and the propodial triangle is usually really rugged, so you get a lot of sculpturing and things like that. But a lot of times, because lazy-glossum males are often difficult to determine in themselves from their wings, because their wings, well, sometimes they're just folded, right, or they're gummed up. But other times, even if they're visible, the weakening of those veins are even subtler, which, as we know, looking at the females, that's pretty subtle already. So my general advice would be to set them aside. If you have any questions on anything, really, is to set those aside and come back to them at the end, and seeing if, while you plow through all the rest of the specimens in your collection, that you have something that you realize matches or has a slightly different and better view. So that's how I do, is I go through the whole collection once initially and identify everything that I know by memorization I don't need to look up and I feel confident about right away. And then I go back through the remainder, and often several times, diminishing that pile of unknown or tricky more and more until I just have ones that I am going to have to invest a little bit more time in terms of looking them up, or maybe taking them to the Smithsonian for comparative things, or sending them out, or just giving up and just calling them genus, whatever the genus is, and species. And I might morphospecies that, or I might just lump them all in as species if I need to. Sometimes that group is usually a hodgepodge, right? So a lot of times you get specimens with no head, or are so mangled for whatever reason that you can tell what the genus is, but you can't tell the species, and that's okay. There's always a percentage there. Recall that your collecting is imperfect anyway, and that you don't want to guess at what the species might be, and it's not that important in general, because you've already lost species in the collecting process. Things got out of your net, got out of your kill jar, were spilled, crawled out of your bowl trap, or a million other things. So don't sweat the details sometimes, just call them species. It's better to err on that way, which is conservative, than to say, well, it's probably this and put a name down, when you know, there's some probability that it may not be that, but yet you've now entered that information into the literature. Okay, so we'll look at the same species, davisii, or davisii, here in the microscope. And moving here, and this one in particular, I have another small one here that is almost completely black that we'll show too. So here we go. That's the same species, recall, and the female, this had a black tip, but now we're showing black here, black and with smudgy edges, nothing very highly edged. It presents very similarly. Oh, we can probably see the, let me get my little strip of paper here. We can see the wing venation here, at least a little bit. It's kind of overlapping with the other, but the strong arch should, I guess it's hard to see because it's slightly angled. This would be the vein, but there it looks straight, but or minorly arched. I'm going to move, but you can see the rest of the specimen is quite sculptured, lots of red. Let's see if we move the wing that we actually do get, just in case I am wrong. But yeah, there's, try and get that better. Here's the strongly arched end. We're at a bit of an oblique angle. Let's just turn it a little bit here this way. And you can see the archedness right through there on the end. Depending on the species, these there's a lot going on with the antenna at the species level in terms of determining species groups. Sometimes the bottoms of the flagellar segments are excavated out, and they look like little divots have been taken out of them. That can vary within the species too, sadly. The amount of sculpturing on the mesopisternum, the sides here, are also become important. And as I said, be great for any of your molecular people to start playing around with these a bit more. Okay, so that's the red species. Let me show you this little teeny one that is, I think, maybe entirely black. So it's very small. You can see it's just glued to this pin here. And there's really no hint of, this is, I believe, a male. I have this as Atlantis/Cressonii. Mike Arduzer says he can tell them apart. I feel like I can never tell them apart, so I lump the two as an identification category. Mike is much more ready with the extraction of the genitalia, which I'm not sure helps in this case, but it could very well. But you have the same wing venation, strong sculpturing, strong submarginal cell wing veins. There was no hair bands. There was no yellow on the clypeus. It's a process of elimination more. You can see the back, even this tiny one, is quite highly sculptured to come up with Sphecodes in the males, versus, oh, I'm looking at a little tiny black lazy glossum / Evolius type of thing. Again, with practice, this is almost always just very readily apparent, but I'm tricked every once in a while too, and we'll put them into categories of the black Evolius if the sculpturing in a particular specimen is not very obvious and there's no red, which tends to happen more in the small species.
Do they always have the beefy antenna?
Say it again?
Lisa asks, do they always have the beefy antenna?
So,
They're fat.
yeah, I'm hedging here.
Chunky.
I would say yes. If you think that's beefy, then that's pretty much what they all look like. I guess you're right. So a lot of times in the lazy glossum males, they're a little skinnier, and their antennal flagellar segments are a little more, they're longer, and so the antennae are longer, and probably they're thinner. So, so yes, I think that's a good gestalt. They're basically chunky and more robust in general, even though the males are going to be thinner than the females, just like the pollen-carrying species. Okay, I'm going to move to Lithurgus. No, sorry, I keep harkening back to the old name, which is Lithurgus for both. This is Lithurgopsis, which is the New World version of Lithurgus. It is a very megachile looking species. Put this on the side here. You can see.
You're looking at the pin, what's our species and what we're looking at?
This is Lithurgus gibbosus.
Lithurgopsis?
Lithurgopsis, thank you.
Lithurgopsis.
Gibbosus, Gibbosus. Gosh, I now feel compelled because I don't think I have in the, do I have that in here in the, yeah, I just have Lithurgus, so this is out of date. We need to update it. And remind me later to update my computer. So we'll go, I know I updated the Genera guide, so we're going to go there to tell the two apart because we now have both groups, although their ranges do not overlap currently. But let's go to Discover Life. It loads, good. And we'll go to the Bumblebee shortcut, and we'll go jump down here. And so we have Lithurgopsis and Lithurgus guides. Also in the Genera guide, you would have splitting those two. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Genus, this is how to tell the subgenera. They would be the genera apart used to be subgenera. Ugh, I can't get out of this. Okay, so we are looking at the native species, which I don't know if this is true for all, but at least some of them are cactus specialists. It's possible that some of the Western ones do other things. Someone could double check that, that'd be awesome. So we're looking at females. So females, the aspect, as we flip back here to the picture, is very megachile. So you would look at this and go, oh, this is a megachile, and set it aside, except for a couple things, which we will talk about in a second. But I'll show you one of the most obvious ones in the female, which is they have weird, and I believe they all do, at least the eastern ones, have these weird plates on the front of their upper part of their clypeus. And may not be part of the clypeus, maybe the supraclypeal area. This is not a great view right here, but we're going to shift it. That's a giant projecting plate, and the shape of those plates is useful at species selection. It'd be nice to get someone to come in and do the Western Lithurgopsis. We just have a couple of the Eastern ones right now, or Midwestern.
Oh.
I believe. I don't think we did the all to the west, did we? So you could check that shelf out there. You can see this arching, very highly projecting, scoop-like projecting member. Pardon? Oh, okay. Now, what that's for, I don't know, but the females have it, so presumably it's useful in maybe pollen collecting. So if we go back and look at the difference between the two, so recall that the European Lithurgus chrysuris is now invaded into the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, and should be also in Maryland and New York, but I don't know if there's records yet for that. And then the Lithurgopsis really only gets into the east just barely in prairie remnants, and I think there's records for certainly for Illinois and Missouri. I wouldn't be surprised if there's records for Tennessee and Louisiana and Arkansas. Okay, so for the females, the notes here for females, the outer hind tibial spur is thickened and strongly bent apically. We'll look for that. And for females, F1, so flagellar segment 1, is shorter, usually shorter than F2, but sometimes very slightly longer. And that's in our natives. And then in the subgenus that's not native, the Lithurgus, no, sorry, not subgenus, the genus Lithurgus, the outer hind tibial spur is thinner and at most very weakly bent, and then we'll look for that. And in the females, F1 is longer, usually about twice as long as F2. All right, so let's check this out in our native Lithurgopsis, and we're going to, so I should also mention, it has an aurolium, so that's how you tell it from Megachile, in addition to these plates on its forehead. And let's do the hind tibial spur, if we can see that here. Oops. Wait there yet. Sometimes these tibial spurs are hard to see. So there is a spur, interestingly enough, that is not the hind tibial one, I think. I think it is the middle, but a lot of times the other spurs, particularly the middle one, will mirror what's going on with the hind one. But let's take a look. Yeah, you can see, even though, just in case we can't see the hind one, that is also bent strongly at the tip. Very similar to Usura hamada, it reminds me of. Now, let's see if we can, with relative ease, go to the hind tibia and see that. Sadly, a lot of times these tibial spurs are difficult to see because they tend to be on the interior side, and the legs in the unkempt specimens that we tend to collect and then pin are hidden because they're crushed against the side of the bee. All right, so I mean, depending on how you think about these things, you can do, which I do every once in a while, is just snap that baby off, and then you can glue it to the label, which is how we deal with body parts that have fallen off or not. So we're looking at a tibial spur. I believe it's on the hind leg here, but we're looking directly down. So whether or not that is bent is impossible to say at this point. Let's see if we can maybe spin this and see if it can be seen from this direction. So there's, gosh, I believe two, always, I can't remember if Megachile has only one tibial spur or two. A lot of them have two. Okay, so here it is. Here's a tibial spur. There is a sharp bend at the tip. So check that box for our species.
We have a conversation happening in the chat.
Yeah.
So about the name, thank you, Jean, for always double checking what I write. But we're wondering, so Laurel points out that giba means hump in Spanish Latin root, as in a camel's hump. So do we think that this is part of the hump on some of the part of the body, or a conversation presumably not, as it's a character for the subfamily, right? Question. Would you like to weigh in?
I don't know. I would think the hump has to do with the facial plate, because there's nothing else very hump-like anywhere else that I can think of.
That's what I was wondering. Carry on.
Okay. All right. Here's escape. That, I believe, should be the pedicel. But most pedicels are about half that size. They're more like I always consider them to be the ball joint of the antennae. And then these should be the, this is at highest magnification. These should be the flagellar segments. If that is 1, let's just count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that 11, 12. So that makes sense because it's a female. We do know that. So that's scape, pedicel, quite long, but not mentioned as distinctive. This is F1. That's F2. F1 is about, but a tiny bit more, as was noted, as long as F2, and theoretically, if I have this right, in Lithurgopsis proper, F1 is longer, usually about twice as long as F2. Certainly not twice as long, but I do think slightly longer. And it does mention F2 shorter than F2, but sometimes very slightly longer. Okay, so I think we have seen the differences as Lithurgopsis chrysurus, the introduced species and genus, begins to extend its range. You will, I want to show one more thing, but you will probably there'll be more conflicts. Right now there's just region alone should be fine. Unless, of course, the interesting thing, there are many interesting things, of course, an interesting thing is that Lithurgopsis chrysurus is a hole nester in wood and is known in North America to invade firewood. So it could well be the case that it could just completely jump to new towns pretty much anywhere. I would look in the east initially, but I think we all should be on the lookout for this species because, like things like the emerald ash borer and whatnot, there's no reason that some person will want to bring their firewood from their house in New Jersey to a fireplace somewhere else, and all of a sudden you have brought over the nests of this species. They actually can, I'm talking about Lithurgopsis chrysurus now, and we spoke about this earlier, so I won't go into it, but they can drill into wood, and it's softwoods, pine and whatnot, but into siding and other places. So there's some damage issues, but also they do, as from that alone, you know that they do different things. To tell them from Megachile proper, they have an aurolium, but they also have, and it's not really showing well here, but they have 1, 2, 3 teeth at the tips of their mandibles. So, and I'm going to say that none of the Megachile have that, at least that way. That's my phone, which we're going to ignore. If I can turn that off, I don't think we can. We'll now shift gears and go to, in the last few minutes, one of the Western species. And I'll put this away. So anyway, the Lithurgopsis chrysurus could show up anywhere, and keep your eyes open. I'm not even sure Lithurgopsis chrysurus was formally documented. No, it was in the 70s. I think Richardson did that. I'm talking to myself now. Oh my gosh, people are calling me all over the place. This one I can turn off. From California. Oh, that's probably BioClip. I lost shipment. So let's go to the. We did
How
Tiloglossa.
big are the Lithurgopsis?
They're right in Megachile range. So like Megachile, Mendica, brevis, about the same size. Now I don't know if there's some Western species that get bigger or different, but my impression is they're all about the same size. T. Okay, so did we do Tilithrix last time? I think we did. I think we did. Okay.
I think so.
And so let's, in this last...
We did Tiloglossa. We did Tilithrix.
Oh, no, right. Tiloglossa, rather, we did. Okay, so we are jumping out west. And again, we invite people to expand guides. So I'm not sure there's an Osiris guide, which we're going to do right now, to the west. And this is a parasitic species. Oh my gosh, they're super persistent. Probably because they're, yes, BioClip is calling. Right. We will call them back. I think they think I'm answering and not, because I'm clicking my incompetence, clicking wrong things. All right. Okay. So this is a nest parasite. I want to say it's a nest parasite. Now I've forgotten because I looked it up last week on the Paratetrapedia one. Okay, hang on one second. Hey, is Sydney here?
I'll take it out.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, and so backing up, we're going to jump to the guides, and I think Osiris is famous for some kind of modified sting apparatus that it has, according to Lawrence. Okay, so we're going to now go to the Genera guide, and we're going to include that it was found in Mexico. I don't believe that there was anything going on in the U.S. yet for Osiris. Okay, so we're cutting through a lot of these things. It's a female. We'll jump back here and take a quick look at the specimen and see what's noticeable. So the tongue is extended. Wow, look at the size of those palps there. I'm not sure that's useful at this level, but it might be something. Rarely is the tongue in this kind of viewable shape in specimens, so this is lovely to see. But in our particular guide, I don't think we, well, I should say you could use it because we do have information about long and short tongue bees. I believe this is a female. I'm going to spin it because I believe the sting was projecting out. Of the hind end. I believe that's the sting there. Again, there was something odd about this species group sting mechanism. Jean will find out for us. So let's look at the wing venation. We have the hind wing is projecting into the front. We can see three submarginals, though, behind the hind wing. We look at the tip of the marginal cell, also very useful. And we see that the tip is not displaced from the margin of the wing, is quite long and is pointed and sitting right on there. Look at the hind legs, and we see no, so this is kind of cheating because I already know the answer, but you can see no scopal hairs there either, so it's not carrying its pollen. It isn't in the Serotina group, which carries its pollen internally. And so let's start with that and go do some guide clicking here. So we know that it is not blues and greens.
This looks very similar to Mata. Are they related?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I believe they're apidae, and there's quite a number. There's, you know, Brachynomata and several other species groups that look a lot like Nomata too. So, yeah, I hesitate to go too far down that path of whether it's convergent or they're just closely related or they're derived from one another. I'm not sure. Maybe nobody knows. Okay, we don't have bright yellow. We do. It is yellowish, but it is not this bright yellow, white, or red. We can click there to make sure that that is the case. Osiris is still in there. The axilla is tame. It is not sticking out. 3 submarginals. Basal vein, I believe, was not strongly arched. So we're going to put it there. I'm just going to, for time's sake, I'm not going to look it up. There, it's still in there, so I think we made the right thing. Vanal to jugal lobe, we'll look at that in aerolium here to check those 2 very useful characters. So we were looking at this specimen, and it had nicely projecting hind wings, so we should be able to say something about the vanal lobe, though I may have to stick a tiny piece of paper in here to isolate it and take a look at it. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so there's the vanal lobe very clearly, and it looks like to me, this is not good specimen treating. It looks like to me that the jugal lobe was on there and was very, oh, look, here we go. That is the jugal lobe, very tiny. So there's the vanal tip. So let's put something under there so maybe that highlights it a little bit more. How about white? Yeah, so nice visual on that, and small, which I believe is a useful, much less than 2/3, although most apparently are in the less than 2/3 category. We'll now look at the legs to see if we can see an aerolium in there. I believe it does have one. There's one. This is a relatively small bee. I'm going to say 8 millimeters, so which means that our ability to focus in is a little limited. And slightly tricky here. I'm going to put some white under it and try and highlight it. Now I'm going to try and use foxing. Again, if you had this in your fingers, you could roll this back and forth to get a better view. I believe that there is a pad right here. Not absolutely sure. Again, lack of time. Let's just say it's present, and let's see if it stays in. Osiris is very much cheating. And then there was a tooth we saw on the claw, and now we're at the end. Oh, we have length, and we're going to put that length as 8 millimeters in this female. See if that gets rid of anything. Get rid of a few. And now we're at the end of the first page. So we'll hit simplify, creating a new guide of these remaining genera that are known from Mexico. We now have available, whether there is no scope present on the, as is this case here, in the female, you can see that 6 genera have that, so it takes us down quite a bit. It's useful at this point, since we just lost a whole bunch of genera and have started simplifying anyway. It's useful to simplify again, recreating a 6 species, 6 genera guide. And now label process seems to be something that we maybe should look at and might be available because the tongue architecture is so out there.
We're coming up on 2.
Oh, and 2. Okay. We'll probably stop here because there's probably a bunch more steps. But let's just do a quick look down and see if there's anything that pygidial plates, scutums. Oh, here's something that is Apialoides and Osiris. Apialoides, if you recall, is the nest parasite of Macropus versus other selected genera. So it says here, kleptoparasitic bees, 4 coxy, vaguely triangular, central ventral carina. Looks like a lot of technical things to play with. 3 submarginals, stigma. This is where, you know, this is why we have these guides.
Okay, so I'm interrupting.
Okay, yeah, please do.
So it says S6 of the female. Scroll back up.
Mm-hmm.
S6 of the female is very elongate, and Jean had put into the chat while you were speaking. Permissioner 2007, S6 of the female is elongate, usually exceeding T6. The lateral margins upturned to form a guide for the enormous sting, figure citation, which, at least in death, is often exerted and reflexed above the metasoma.
There we go. Okay, so it does look like the abdomen is expressed out. That is a very blunt sting, blunt and big sting. Let's flip it to the sternites.
Enormous is underlined.
Enormous is underlined. Wow. Okay, maybe that's what I recall from hearing from Lawrence. The enormous sting of Osiris.
Legendary.
Legendary sting. All right, so we won't go through all the rest of the guide, but there is, oops. I don't know if we have enough visuals on here. I can't quite see the boundary. This appears to be the boundary here between the tergites, and you can't see where the second one is, but it is quite pointed. The sting is quite blunted, and so I think that if you were doing your identifications, you would find out the species.
Isn't that S6, not the sting? I think.
This, I think, is S6.
Yeah.
I think the sting is that. Again, I'm not. Let me try and go way up here with ID. So yeah, maybe we were actually looking not at the sting, but actually at S6, which I think projecting out over. This is T6 or T5 here. I don't know if it has a T6. And projecting out over the end. It's a little murky because we don't have great light or definition going on at this magnification. Something is happening there that you probably could see if you're actually looking at the specimen. Just scrolling a little bit there. So maybe that wasn't the sting. That was actually, although that could be the sting there. That was actually the projecting S6, and this thing could be retracted. So I think we'll stop there time-wise, and we'll look at maybe a few more Western genera. People can state their preferences, and if not, then we're going to move into species level. I think we were talking about maybe Agapostumum, because a lot of people get Agapostumum and then struggle with them, even though they're common.
Yeah, we had a request for Agapostumum, and we have a Bumbles request. But Agapostumum, I think we could do in a day.
Yeah.
Bumbles be a short series.
Yeah.
A couple of things following the chat. And to answer my question, Missionary 2007 says Osiris was long included in the Nomadinae tribe, but they have been found to not display certain characteristics, and it seems like they evolved independently. Science is cool. Some votes for Agapostumum. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. Also, I will post on the team site. There's going to be some fresh pictures in those files for you this week, courtesy of Paul needing pictures of things. So I'm being pressured to do the thing that I said I would do. So there'll be new pictures of things like the hamate hairs of Floraligas and things like that. If the Ohio, or who was it, the Oregon bee people want to stay on the line, I'll have Sam stay and turn his speaker on, and you can talk.
Okay. And
I'm stopping recording now.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. Yeah. But let me also mention that there are several other genera guides. We, in our links sections, we send these out all the time. Genera guides online for Canada, I know, has a good one, and I believe there are ones for Oregon. I think what I would like to do is to introduce those also. Mike Arduzer has them, and we'll try and organize a session where we have other people talking about their guides, so we don't need the microscope, but it'll be a good presentation of your options. So if you have if you maintain a genera guide of some kind, or you know of your other favorites, send them to us, and then we will try to put that together. In Mexican, I think guides would also be very welcome here. And yeah, so anyway, I'll leave it like that.
Great. Can you turn your speaker back on just in case somebody is trying to talk?